Hey, welcome to the Virtually Speaking podcast. My name is Pete Flecha, and joining me as usual is my compadre, Mr. John Nicholson. John, I'm so happy to see you're wearing your hat again.
You know, I needed to make sure it's ready and it's in good form. You know, ready for Explore with it coming up. I need to make sure it's fitting well, it's snug, and it's just gonna connect. I feel like it needs to be connected to me. You know, if it's too far away, hats aren't wireless, man. You know.
Well, interesting segue on that. Yeah, like when you came to Charlotte for the VMUG, you left your hat in my car. And I was like, oh my goodness, you left your hat, and I know you must have felt very disconnected from your hat. So fortunately I was able to, make that connection, get you right back in there and get you your hat. So
connectivity is everything.
I was all about keeping that hat, but I don't think I can pull it off as much as you do, but yeah, we are talking about connectivity. We've been going through a whole series. For those that have been listening, we did a whole series on exploring VMware Cloud Foundation, where we spoke to a lot of the executives, a lot of the senior leadership on just the sort of the vision of VMware Cloud Foundation 9. That was really fun. And then over the past couple of weeks, we've been diving a little deeper into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of the various components that make up VMware Cloud Foundation. And so today we're going to continue that conversation, talking about what's new with NSX and VCF 9.0. And so joining the conversation, we've got two subject matter experts, starting with a good friend of ours, Varun Santosh. Varun, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Like you said, it's my first time on the pod. I'm a long-term listener, first-time contributor, so I'm looking forward to talking about all things networking.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Varun. We appreciate you taking the time to join with us. You're not alone. Also joining the conversation was a solution engineer at one point. He's now in the product management. Thomas Vignon. Thomas, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be there.
Yeah, I was like, John, have you seen a lot of people that go from SE to product management? That's a nice step. I like seeing people in product management that have had that field expertise.
I was gonna say the connection to customers is, I feel like, critical for product managers to be able to set the direction and provide that feedback loop. So that's useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's nice on this conversation to make sure that we've got folks from both sides of the house, from the technical and product marketing, and also from the actual product team. So gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We've got some time, but I'd say, there was a blog that came out recently, and I put a short link on, if you're watching the video, short link below. If you're listening to this, I'll, be sure to check the show notes of the podcast, and we'll leave a link to it. But yeah, there's been several great blogs that have come out on VCF 9 for NSX. This one was the announcement blog, just talking about, some of the new features. I think one of the biggest, most popular features, is the VPC, the Virtual Private Cloud. We're going to dive into that, but also some of the enhancements in performance and just how it's easier to deploy. So I would love to maybe walk through the various components of that. But before we dive too deep, maybe we can start with the basics, like for folks that are not familiar with not familiar with NSX, or especially how it connects with VCF. Maybe Varun, you could just start at the high level and just kick off like a short introduction, if you will, to VCF networking.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you well know, network virtualization and software-defined networking, it's been around for more than a decade. And the value that it delivers to the enterprise network, that has also evolved quite significantly over that time, right? So with VMware Cloud Foundation, or VCF, it's really the first time someone has tried to combine the agility and scale of the public cloud with the security and resilience and performance of a private cloud. And we have designed and architected the networking components of Cloud Foundation to deliver that agility and resilience that many of our customers expect from this private cloud. So what does that mean? That means we are enabling customers to speed up application deployment through self-service access to network resources. We want platform and application teams to be able to deploy applications faster without going through a complex ticketing process. We've also designed VCF networking such that it fits right into your existing network environment, right? We don't want to disrupt or cause a re-architecture. So we use standardized interfaces with your existing switch fabrics from your vendor of choice, whether it's Cisco, Arista, Juniper, or some other vendor, and we really make it easy for you to deliver network services for your Cloud Foundation workloads. And finally, we do all of this while lowering the overall IT spend, right? So we are enabling infrastructure teams to better utilize the available vSphere and compute capacity, use more automation, and really achieve consistent policy across multiple availability zones and regions, just making operations simpler and more agile.
Nice. So let's take it a little step further and talk a little bit about the various capabilities that are part of part of NSX.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cool thing is we deliver a wide variety of these networking capabilities in one single platform, right? So the platform at its core, it's built on network virtualization or software-defined networking, where we decouple network services from physical appliances to make them more agile and adaptable for the private cloud, right? So that's what enables virtual private clouds or VPCs, which are a fundamental building block for that private cloud. Next, we have container networking, which is also integrated. So you can deploy policies for both VMs and containers from the same platform. And then you get unified visibility and troubleshooting across the entire private cloud, right? So that's the third major pillar or the key capability. Next, you get true workload mobility, right? So this really simplifies workload migration without impacting the underlying infrastructure. So there is no reconfiguration needed when moving workloads around. And finally, of course, with the vDefend add-on, you get granular east-west traffic protection for microsegmentation and other advanced security capabilities.
Okay, so when you say workload mobility, I always associate that with like HCX. Is that not the same thing?
Yeah, so that's the underlying component that delivers that capability. So if you look across the board, there are multiple components which used to be standalone product, but are now a part of the entire Cloud Foundation platform, right? So that means you can lifecycle them as one single platform. You can monitor, troubleshoot across them as one single platform. So what used to be known as HCX or the workload mobility piece is now part of the core VCF platform.
Okay, so I don't have to buy that separate. It's I'm also. It sounds like VCF is actually willing to help me with that stand up, help me with that update of that. So it's not one more thing I have to go deploy and patch and figure out.
Absolutely. And I think some of the configurations that you need in other products, right? So for example, some of the networking configuration that you need in able to enable HCX, all that is done upfront for you because it's all life cycled and configured as one single platform.
Nice, nice. And I think Tanzu used to have their own, what was it, Entrea, where it had like its own networking that was like a separate product. So is that part of VCF as well now?
Yes, yeah. So Antrea is also built in to the VCF platform. So for those who are less familiar, Antrea is the container networking interface. It's an open source product, but VMware also has an Antrea distribution that works very well. It's completely integrated into the VCF platform and its lifecycle.
Nice. I like it. I like it. Well, cool. So let's switch gears slightly and talk a little bit about some of the changes. I know there's been a lot of hype around some of the changes with NSX for VCF 9. You know, I've heard the VPC word so many times. It's not even funny in every conversation. I know there's a lot more than that, but maybe Thomas, maybe we can start. You could talk a little bit. Both of you actually. Let's keep this an open conversation, but talk a little bit about some of the new changes inside of VCF 9.
Yes. So really what we wanted to do for VCF 9 is make VCF one product. I think that was mentioned before. NSX was a different product, but really now the goal is to position VCF as like the cloud product. And for that to have cloud networking, which is easy, which is consistent, which is standard, And that's what we want to provide with the VPC. And so what's very nice with VPC, it's a common construct that you would find on the different public clouds. And it's something that will make your networking consumption simple, and it will make it consistent. So basically, you can use VPC from your vCenter, from VCF automation for your cloud consumers, or from NSX, of course. But it's really the same everywhere, and it has this cloud consumption model. We are not just doing VPC. We are also simplifying like how those VPCs connect together by introducing a construct called the transit gateway. We're working a lot on tenancy in order to enable VCF automation. And we are also, of course, improving the performance and how fast the packet goes for the different new types of workloads.
Okay, so break it down for me. What's different about VPCs versus just traditional overlay port groups that I could have created with NSX before? Like from a management, from an IO path, what is unique? What's different here?
So the idea is to allow the users, even if they are not networking focused, to leverage the networking capabilities. And that's something that public cloud have done pretty well. All of your VM, they need connectivity, but not everyone comes from networking. And so the goal is how can we simplify your consumption of the cloud so that you will provide the right networking capability for the right personas. And what we're going to see is that when you deploy VCF, your environment is meant to be VPC ready. It's ready to use the VPC. And you can, from your vCenter, let's say you need just a network to connect your VM and receive an IP, like DHCP. You don't need more than that. You should be just able to consume that. Or maybe you want an environment which is a cloud environment and you want multiple teams working in parallel. VPC will provide that. So basically, it's like networking as a service without the need to know what is a router and all the concepts which are below.
Okay, so I just create a couple VLANs to start off with, set up my BG peering on the outbound, and then I can just summon at will networks and broadcast domains and whatnot in a multi-tenant configuration by API or VCF automation or whatever it be.
Yeah, all
Exactly.
inside of the VCF automation, or it's essentially vSphere. Like we don't have to go outside, right?
Yes, you can do everything from the vCenter. And we even introduced, and that's a new thing in 9, a mode where you don't even need BGP. You just connect to a VLAN. You don't need new components like edge nodes, and it's the distributed connection, and you can start using VPC.
Oh wow! So I can reuse existing networks, and is that intended a lot for brownfield for existing workloads or existing networks to bring those in, or?
You can do both. So I think actually that's an important one is we offer VPC for consumption and simpler networking consumption, more powerful networking consumption. But of course, it works in conjunction with existing model. So you can still have your VMs running on brownfield and VLANs. You can disconnect and reconnect your VMs if you want, but you don't have to. And you can use that to deploy new workloads, like for instance, new environment relying on VCF automation and containers environment as well. And so this is the VPC construct. So the goal is really to have something which is standard and which will make sense right away to every user who has seen any of the different public clouds. It's like you create your networks, they are routed together within the VPC, no need to do any configurations for that. And then you choose what are the networks which are meant to be available from the outside world, and what are those which are not meant to be available, like what are the web frontals, what are the database, and then you can use the services like the firewalling, the NAT, like the different services in addition to that inside the VPC.
And so what about self-service? What does that look like?
So here, I think what we see is how VPC can be consumed self-service consistently from the different places in VCF. And so VCF being a complete cloud platform, you have some users who are the vCenter administrator deploying workloads. And so they'll be able to have VPCs from under the networking in vCenter. You have, of course, the network admin who can have everything in NSX. But you also have the cloud users using automation or deploying container workloads in supervisor cluster. They will also rely on VPC. And it's the same object consistently, no matter which screen you go through to. And one important piece also is the monitoring or the workload mobility that we mentioned, they are also there supporting VPC. So the idea is to have really something consistent across the entire VCF.
Okay, so the observability piece and the operations for networks, that's going to give me that layer 4, that NetFlow visibility that I would have previously used vRealize Network Insight for.
Yes, that, and also the configuration retrieved from the API.
Oh, cool. Because that's nice being able to see what my apps are connecting, not just, oh, these VMs are talking to each other, but like if I'm trying to build segmentation rules or understand security posture, things like that, it's really handy to be able to see what was talking to what on. It also helps with application discovery because if, okay, I see certain ports, okay, I know that's SQL, or I know, okay, port, 80 is open as a web server, 25, someone's sending email, things like that. Being able to do discovery at the application layer using that capability is handy.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. So, and for those that are listening, I would recommend watching the YouTube, or at least reading some of the blogs that we're going to be sharing, because there's a lot of really good content out there, and some good visuals here. Can you walk us through what this looks like, for example, for an application team that's trying to use VPCs?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to the next slide, so what that shows is really the integration in vCenter and VCF automation. What does that mean for the platform team and the application team, right? So you can now deploy your applications within these VPC constructs, and that includes the connectivity, load balancing, and the security policies that their workloads require within this VPC, right? So what does this mean? You no longer need to go through a complex ticketing process that involves multiple teams to get the infrastructure provisioned. And if you move next, this VPC construct allows you to deploy things without involving networking, security, all the other infrastructure teams. You're able to deploy applications. A lot of the heavy lifting is done just by creating that VPC or using your existing VPCs, right? You may not even have to create any new VPCs. Now, what this really means is it removes any friction between those different teams when it comes to application deployment and provisioning, right? So it gives you faster application deployment. And then the other benefit is that at the same time, it lowers your operational overhead on the IT team.
Nice. What does that look like for the relationship between like dedicated network teams and like virtual, VI admins, if you will? Is that a positive, you think, or?
Yeah, it is. So it really helps the networking team become strategic, right? In the sense, they are still responsible for creating the overall network architecture, figuring out how these VPCs connect into the physical fabric. They're still responsible for scaling the network performance. So they're still very strategic to rolling out the private cloud. But what we are really trying to do is remove the friction when someone goes to deploy an application, right? Because when you think about how an application gets deployed, typically in a public cloud, you get a VPC environment and you go ahead and deploy the application without worrying about how the application fits into the underlying infrastructure. So we want to bring that same kind of cloud operating model to your private cloud and really remove that friction between those multiple infrastructure teams.
Okay. That makes sense. So Thomas, what does this actually look like in vCenter? Maybe you can walk us through what it looks like from a deployment and a consumption perspective.
Yeah, I think vCenter is a very good example. We worked quite a lot on that one because really what we wanted to avoid was to do a bolt-on integration and like put the NSX UI or anything. Really, the idea is that VPC is a feature of VCF, it's a feature of vCenter. And so if you look at it, everyone who uses vCenter knows this place. That's the networking place of vCenter. So it's like the networking tab just next to the host and the VMs and the storage. And that's the same place from where you would manage your virtual port groups and your DVS. And so here now you can do, in addition to that, the VPC. And the VPC for the vCenter admin is like a super VDS in some way, which allows the vCenter admin to create his network, to connect his VMs, and to see the topology, just like he can for the VDS in vCenter, and to connect the VMs. And one of the thing I like to say is that just like the VDS made the life of the vSphere admin a lot simpler than the VSS, which was a switch per host. The idea is that the VPC can allow to make it even simpler by allowing to configure the networks without having to rely on VLANs and all those configurations. But it's the same operation model.
I like that. I love the topology view where it actually shows the thing. Is that the kind of thing where you can? It's more than just a visual. Like, is it something like where you can, drag and then it actually creates in the background like new networks or new connections, or is it that's just a visual of what the
No,
setup is?
yeah, it's not a blueprint, it's a representation. So it will evolve as you build the constructs. It will represent the VM, but that's a representation.
Pete would like
Oh, okay.
networking his crown. He can just draw on the
Yeah.
wall and it shows up.
That's
Yes. Yeah.
That's VCF automation blueprints for you. Like you drag and you drop, and you can create your blueprint template.
Honestly, that's what I was thinking of. I love the way that the blueprints work, where you can literally it literally creates the code for you just by doing your drag and drop. I was the guy that didn't want to learn HTML. I wanted to do WYSIWYG. So yeah, I like things to be done for me. Very good, very good. So yeah, all right. So Varun, maybe we can talk about creating default isolation between workloads.
Yeah, absolutely. I think John alluded to this earlier, right? What else does a public cloud offer you? It offers you default isolation when you create a VPC so that you're not mixing workloads of different types. So if you look at a typical application environment in a private cloud, for example, here you have the dev test environment, you have enterprise services, then you have a production environment, and maybe you want dev test to have access to production but not to services. So what does this implementation look like? If you advance this, you'll see that without VCF networking, it really requires configuring multiple networking and security appliances to get to that desired isolation between your different environments, right? So you might have to create new VLANs on your switches. You might have to configure and map security policies based on the type of workloads that you're deploying. Whereas with VCF networking, if you advance, you'll see that it's again as simple as creating these multiple VPCs, either through VCF automation or through vCenter for these different application environments, and you get isolation between these different applications by default, right? So what this means is you greatly simplify segmentation between these different applications. And of course, if you want to go even more granular, you should look at microsegmentation with the vDefend add-on.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, getting that extra security capabilities between those networks, because it's great to have all these networks, but as you build those out, you're going to want to segment those as well as also do load balancing and other advanced things, I'm sure, as you go through that.
Yeah,
Nice.
I think a common theme that you'll see running across all the innovations is we want to remove that friction, right? And we want application deployment and network consumption to be as smooth as possible. So the extent to which we can consolidate all these workflows and really make it simple to deploy the application in a day two scenario, that's what we are shooting for.
I like that automation, and some of it's about speed, but also some of it's about just accuracy. Because it always amazed me when I'd open tickets with different groups. I opened a ticket with a DBA. Give me a database. Give me this schema. Okay, come back generally. Oh, Active Directory. Hey, I need this GPO for VDI. They'd give me that. Or give me this OU. Okay, they'd create that. I opened a ticket with a networking team. There was a none greater than 0% chance when I would ask them for a network or for something that, like, I don't know, they just typoed things. I don't know. Maybe there's no spell check in NXOS or something, but it was a very consistent theme of, like, it took a lot. One, it wasn't instant, which is great from automation, but often
Yeah.
I found out after the fact of, like, oh, these 3 hosts are missing this VLAN, and I VM a VM there, and it just goes into the void and disappears and stops responding. That automation also helping with the accuracy of configuration is something that frankly excites me as someone who is bogged down in operations.
Absolutely. Yeah. Automation is definitely a key component in the cloud operating model for sure. And maybe we can even talk about that. So from an automation perspective, VCF automation is a big part of NSX. Maybe we can see how these VPCs work in VCF automation.
Yes, I think actually that's one of the big benefit as well, is that those VPCs, they allow to have a context for the networking. And so they allow to allocate some IPs, some ranges of IPs to the different tenants, make sure there's no mistake, as you mentioned, give the self-service capability to the tenant with the right guardrails, and also have the context of the tenancy of the VCF automation organization, so that we can label the logs, we can label the alarms, and we can provide that for the monitoring and the troubleshooting. So VPC allows this cloud consumption model, and that's not for that. It makes sense because that comes basically from the public cloud. That's the same. The idea is to have on-prem a public cloud model.
Yeah, and it gives John that self-service networking that he needs.
Exactly.
I don't trust Pete as a network admin. I'm never going to get my broadcast domains I need.
Yeah, well, there's a good reason for that. All right, so Varun, maybe we could talk a little bit about doing actual deployments and what it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So not only have we added all these new networking capabilities in VCF, we have also made it easier than ever for you to get started, right? So the goal is to make it easy for your cloud and infrastructure admins to create a VPC ready deployment whenever you are installing VCF. So we have included the networking in the VCF install process. So the screenshot that you see here of the VCF installer, you get to deploy VPCs as part of that workflow. And once it's installed, you get immediate access to VPCs through vCenter and VCF automation, like Thomas talked about earlier, right? You can start connecting your workloads immediately to these VPCs and get instant connectivity and security. You don't need to go through another round of infrastructure provisioning, your routers, your switches, your firewalls, your load balancers. The moment these VPCs get deployed, your workloads can immediately get connectivity and the appropriate firewall rules. And finally, the last thing I wanted to touch on was that your vSphere hosts come pre-installed with the bits that are needed, right? So they come pre-installed with all the virtual networking components, which is different from how it used to be prior to the integration, right? So prior to VCF 9.0, you would configure networking separate from your compute, storage, and the rest of the environment. Here, since your hosts are coming pre-installed, you can just go in and start creating network topologies. So this gives you a quick, consistent way of deploying networking and VPCs as part of your Cloud Foundation deployment process.
Nice. So, and I know like there are different customers out there that maybe are not familiar with NSX and or they have their existing networking and may think to themselves, oh, we're just going to use our existing investment for however long. But to my understanding, when you're doing the full deployment, as you just mentioned, right, whether or not you even use any of your own networking, the networking that actually runs and is set up for the deployment is all going to be done through NSX, and it's going to be deployed for you just as you go through the installation.
Yes. No, actually, you can still use. We are not removing any features. So the features that you're using, of course, they continue to run, and you can use VLANs. But what we've done is that, as Varun said, we bundled inside the ESXi host the NSX modules, and so you have the virtual networking available, ready to be used, and we've made the deployment really light. Like as mentioned, you don't even need BGP or those protocols. You just can latch on to a VLAN and start using the VPCs.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Honestly, it doesn't, I understand people may have different, like I know, like I think John likes to call them dim lickers or server huggers, where people love to, they're very connected to their physical hardware or whatever. And I assume that's like that in the networking world, people holding on to their Cisco routers or whatever. But it makes a lot more sense to me, just looking from the outside, to have all of your networking, compute, and storage all virtual, but also all part of an aggregated system that does all of that. It just seems like a much more, it certainly seems easier to deploy, but also easier to consume. Is that the way you see it as well, or?
Yeah, so actually, that's the model. The goal is that as part of, you cannot have a cloud without having networking. If you have static networking, as I think it was mentioned, it makes it very static to deploy your environment. And so the idea is to have something which is already built in, which is very light, that you can use whenever you require in order to deploy the required features that you want. And with VPC, we've made that in a very standardized manner, but using all the knowledge and the capabilities that we developed over the years with NSX. And we made it easy from vCenter, easy from VCF automation, so that the different personas there can directly take advantage of VPCs.
I like it. I like it. Well, that is a good start. It's a good start of a conversation. As I mentioned, there is a blog on the VCF 9 page, short link below, and also in the show notes of the podcast for those listening to the audio. I am assuming that there's going to be a lot of NSX conversation at VMware Explorer, which is coming up very soon. Gentlemen, are there any sessions that you're aware of that we should be looking for as we all start to fill our schedules?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a wide range of networking sessions. So we have 101 level sessions, both on the technical side and also on the business side. And then we graduate to like 200 and 300 level sessions as well, kind of covering the entire networking portfolio, right? So right from network virtualization to workload mobility, security. There are a lot of sessions on the vDefend add-on. So yeah, absolutely. There's you won't be short of content at Explorer.
Yeah,
Nice.
Actually, I have a session which is on consuming VPC from vCenter without ever touching NSX, because as mentioned, one of the goals is to bring those capabilities to the right places in the product with the right features for the right personas. And so if you're vCenter admin, for instance, there is a session on that, on how you can take advantage of those capabilities from vCenter itself.
Nice. I'm going to go click myself some new networks then. This sounds fun.
Absolutely. And I will be sure to leave links to all of the sessions as well as all the blogs. I mean, there's quite a lot of blogs that have come out. Even from a migration perspective, there's a lot of really good content that's come out. So we are going to leave links to all of the announcements, the launch blog, but also the sessions to register for Explore. So Varun and Thomas, I want to thank you for joining us on Virtually Speaking, and hopefully we'll see you in Vegas in a few weeks.
Yes, thanks a lot for having us.